You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. Bitcoin, Ether, Solana, Doge, and more. Cryptocurrencies and digital assets are taking the financial world by storm. This exploding market provides everything a savvy trader needs: volatility, volume, and liquidity, provided you know how to find it. That's where we come in. Welcome to the Crypto Rundown. Each week, we'll break down the latest trading activity, trends, and developments throughout the world's leading crypto derivatives markets. If it's moving the crypto markets, then you'll find it on the Crypto Rundown. The Crypto Rundown is brought to you by Amber Data. If you're entering the digital asset class, you'll need access to granular on-chain and market data from multiple venues to power research, trading, risk management, and compliance. Amber Data delivers comprehensive data and insights into blockchain networks, crypto markets, and decentralized finance, empowering financial institutions to apply traditional finance methods to digital assets. Amber Data eliminates the infrastructure setup, integration challenges, and maintenance headaches to access digital asset data, reducing cost and time to market to enter the digital asset class. Learn more and download their digital asset data guide at www.amberdata.io. Now it's time to dive into the exploding world of crypto derivatives. It's time for the Crypto Rundown.
All right, everybody, that music means we are back once again for the first time in the new year for a little show we like to call around these parts, the Crypto Rundown. My name, of course, Mark Longo from the THE, optionsinsider.com, as well as from the network upon which so many of you are just mainlining these days. Remember, if you like what you hear, this show, anything else on the network, do throw a like, a comment, a star. It all helps new people continue to discover the content at the end of the day. Of course, we have been doing this for a little while now. This January marks, 17 years. Crazy to say out loud. 17 years since we kicked off this whole options podcasting thing. Way before the iPhone, before most people even knew what the hell a podcast was. It was a fun time to be making podcasts, listeners. Lots changed in the intervening 17 years. What hasn't changed is our love for the listeners and for you folks showing that love with some likes, some comments, some stars. Obviously, the newer stuff does get favored by the algorithm. So if you like what you hear, throw a like, a comment. All that stuff in aggregate does help new people continue to discover the content. And of course, if you want to discover more content in your life, and really, who can blame you out there? A lot going on out there in the world of all things options. Only one place to go, theoptionsinsider.com/pro. The place to go to get not just live access to this and everything else we do, but also great pro Q&A content, great pro content like the Q&A sessions, and of course, options oddities every week, and a whole bunch of other exclusive stuff that we put in there, as well as great giveaways as well. So make sure you're checking that out if you're not. theoptionsinsider.com/pro. The place to go to learn more. As we go around the horn, see who's joining us here to kick off the new year, a mad start to the new year in the crypto markets. You know, listeners, it didn't seem right. It didn't seem appropriate to kick off the new year, especially with the madness going on in the crypto space, with anyone other than our old friend, Mr. Bill himself, a.k.a. Bill Ulivieri from Cenacle Capital Management, also the author of the new hot tome for recovering your digital assets on the estate planning side. So a lot of fun to be had there. Mr. Bill, welcome back to the Crypto Rundown and indeed to the network for the first time in the new year, sir.
Oh my gosh, Mark, thank you so much for having me. And you have done a remarkable job over the last 17 years. Happy anniversary. You bring amazing content. And I remember you back when you first started this channel. So it's great to be a part of your show today. And honestly, just kudos for just working like an absolute mule and just never stopping to provide good content to your listeners.
Well, I appreciate that. I think you and I met on an actual radio set and then doing an actual radio show, did we not? So yes, it all traces back to crazy broadcast days as we keep on rolling, listeners, right on into the Bitcoin Breakdown.
It's time to explore the latest trending activity, trends, and developments across the world's leading crypto market. It's time for the Bitcoin Breakdown.
All right, there we go, listeners. Welcome to the Bitcoin Breakdown, the portion of the show where we do just that. We break down all the madness in the world of Bitcoin. We've been off for a couple of weeks, as you might imagine, the tail end of December, not the hottest of times. And then, of course, we had Christmas and New Year's on back-to-back Mondays, so I kind of made it hard to record the Crypto Rundown. I'm not a monster. Not going to make people come in on Christmas Day and New Year's Day, listeners. So no shows for the last couple of weeks, but now we are back in action out there, listeners. And you know what else is back in action, listeners, is freaking Bitcoin. Holy goodness. Man, what a rampage it has been on since our last show on December 18th. We went out of that show 41,656. It seemed like, I should say at the time, maybe things were lightening up to the upside. We were going to kind of tread water heading into this potential approval. Not so much the case, listeners. We've just exploded since then. 46,917 is where Bitcoin was when we kicked off the show today. Up a whopping 5,261 handles since our last show, listeners. Man, just quite the rampage. The high actually came earlier this morning, right before showtime, a little bit north of 47,000, 47,257. The low, we bounced right off of 40K back right on that show, right on December 18th show as well. So it's been quite the range, but 5,200 handles since our last show. It's been a while, listeners, since we've had that kind of aggressive move out there in the Bitcoin market. So let's start there, Mr. Bill, before I start breaking down all the vol and the skew and everything else. It's obviously been just a tumultuous time in the crypto markets. We haven't chatted with you on the show since back in October 16th, so it's been a while since we've had you back on the old Crypto Rundown. So a lot to unpack. Walk us through your thoughts on the insane end of the year. Also, because it's our first show of the new year, if you have any overall thoughts or takeaways from the mad year that was 2023 from a crypto perspective, have at it. And then on top of that, Mr. Bill, if you have time, what are your thoughts on this mad run of nearly 5,000 handles since our last show, sir?
Boy, Mark, it's listen, you have to admit that all asset classes in 2023 were just amazing. The NASDAQ 100 was up. I'm just going to throw some general numbers up. NASDAQ 100 QQQ up 52%, somewhere between 46 and 52%. The S&P 500 up 19 to 21%. Dow Jones Industrial up 9. Bonds rallied. Yield curve kind of was all over the place in 2023, and even the long-term bonds like TLT, which closed out, the low was somewhere in the low to mid 80s, traded almost 100 per share, and now it's pulled back again. And so in crypto was no different. I mean, Ethereum, Bitcoin, XRP, just so much launched. And again, with the hope of an exchange-traded fund, a spot Bitcoin ETF was all over the news. I mean, that's all that's been going on. And even at the beginning of 2023, we saw the Grayscale Bitcoin Investment Trust traded about a 43% discount to net asset value. Now it's almost flat, maybe down, maybe 10 under. I'll have to take a look. I haven't looked in a couple of days. But we've really seen that narrow, maybe a 10 or 11% discount. So it certainly seems as the crypto winter is over, it seems as though the retail public is really still continuing the clamor for the ETF. And we're seeing BlackRock and other exchange-traded fund sponsors altering, changing, resubmitting, all their forms in order to be the first mover to the Bitcoin ETF. And So for the time being, I mean, the market is a little bit overdone. I'm not going to say that it isn't. I mean, we've had a huge rally, even with rates high. So I'm cautious at these levels. Bitcoin had an amazing risk-on rally, as did all cryptocurrency, and it's going to be an incredible 2024 going into the election in November.
That it is, Mr. Bill. You were early on the tip of saying crypto winter was dead. Maybe you were a little too early on that front, but you were eventually proven right, sir. That's all that matters, right?
Exactly. I'm definitely guilty of being too early, right?
I think you were declaring it over like I forgot, was it March of last year? You were a little optimistic, but you know what? That's why we like you, Bill, on the show at the end of the day. You bring the ray of sunshine into these markets that could sometimes be a little bit overwhelming for a lot of people out here. Let's break down some of this data right now. Listeners, again, all this vol and everything else coming at you, courtesy of our friends over there at amberdata.io, the place to go to kick the tires and light the fires. If you did that, listeners, you'd see, man, are we in a different vol regime than the last time we talked? What a difference a couple of weeks makes, listeners. My goodness, it doesn't seem like it was that long ago in the Bitcoin world that we were talking about Bitcoin vol in the mid to high 20s. I remember I said then, this is pretty low. You may want to think about buying some premium as opposed to selling it. And sure enough, on our last show a few weeks ago, we were at a 44. This week, listeners, 7-day vol. Again, this is weekly vol, so take it with a grain of salt. But also, so much action happens in the near-dated contracts that you have to pay attention to it. The weekly 7-day vol now, listeners, in Bitcoin at 87, exploding, threatening that triple-digit level again that we saw a while ago in Bitcoin. But it's been a while since we've actually seen those levels out there. So 87 in the 7-day volatility. Listen, Bitcoin is not playing. But then again, I just told you we're up over 5,000 handles since our last show. So you could certainly argue those vol levels are merited. We go out a month to a more standard vol metric, 30-day vol, listeners. We were at a 52 on our last show, and that looked pretty juicy. And we're coming back in now, 68.5. So vol on the 30-day front also exploding, listeners. And not to be outdone, let's go out 6 months down the curve, listeners. Go out 180 days. That vol a little bit north of 56 on our last show. Coming into the start of the show today, 64. So vol up across the board, listeners, which again, just given that movement I broke down at the top of the show, should come as no surprise to anyone. But still, seeing these numbers again, we have not seen these vol levels in quite some time out here in Bitcoin land. So kind of interesting. This is hearkening back to some of the earlier days of this show and the earlier days of the crypto derivatives market, at least here in the U.S., where these vol numbers were through the roof. Haven't seen those in a while, but starting to sniff those again, which is kind of interesting. Let's get out to the skew front. Let's see what's going on out there. Let's start in the 7-day, again in the weeklies, and work our way out as we are wont to do, listeners. And let's start in the 7-day skew. It was about a -0.5 on our show last week, which again, kind of interesting, also showing you that the near-dated skew, that's why we were talking about maybe things seemed like they had topped out for a little bit, because all the skew was kind of flat on our show last time, but that didn't stop Bitcoin from rallying like crazy. It was -0.5. Coming into the start of the show today, flat. It's back to flat. So it's interesting, given all the action I just broke down for you there, listeners, that coming into the start of the show today, the weekly skew once again flat. So maybe what Bill was alluding to earlier also being represented and reflected here a little bit in these skew numbers. Maybe the options market thinking maybe we've topped out here a little bit. I mean, we have had quite the run, so you'd be forgiven for thinking maybe we're going to tread water here a little bit. 30-day skew, so again, a more normal frame of reference for skew measurement. It was a 0.6 to the positive side, so mildly positive this time a couple of weeks ago. Coming in and started the show today, 0.75. So again, mildly positive. Nothing to really write home about there. So no real evolution on the skew front, which again showing us maybe the options market pricing in a bit of a hovering, a bit of a hanging out around these levels for a little bit. Going out a little bit farther, going out 6 months, we had a positive 3.15 on the show 2 weeks ago. This week it's a positive 5. So longer term, they are pricing in a little bit more action to the upside, which again, that's kind of what we've come to expect out there in the longer term Bitcoin markets. Mr. Bill, any of that from a vol or a skew perspective come as a surprise to you? Seems like they're pricing in a little bit of a hovering for the near term.
Well, we used to say in the trading floor, Mark, you have to buy the rumor and sell the news. And so when we rebalanced our portfolios at the end of last year, we actually took a lot of chips off the table in terms of not only the NASDAQ 100 QQQ and some of our other growth exchange traded funds, but it killed me to sell off our GBTC position, but it had just gotten.
Oh, your favorite
right?
position. Yes, you were right on that one too. It did recover. What is the discount now?
You know what? Well, I'll take a look, but it's around 11%. But I'll take a look. I'll type it in. I'll check it out right now. But it is interesting because I am really surprised at these vol levels that you're mentioning, because once again, once the spot ETF gets approved, I mean, Bitcoin kind of falls into this sign of like, oh, it's just the ordinary asset class now. Okay, let's just and I just can't imagine how this is going to look going forward. I mean, if I was an asset manager, and this is just a personal opinion, this is not investment advice, but I have to figure out a way of selling this volatility and maybe harvesting some of this, because these vol levels, I think, are just ridiculous for what I think could happen, going forward with Bitcoin. I don't see a huge explosion, and I don't see a huge decline. Like you said, it seems kind of sidewaysy, at least from my perspective, technically. So I don't know. This is really an interesting trade thing lining up here.
It must have really pained you to sell that Bitcoin trust. I know what a big fan you were of it, and how you were diving in when a lot of folks were scared to. When it was a 50% discount, people could rationally think, well, this thing's either going to recover that discount or it's going to go to zero, right? It's going one way or the other.
It's so 5.57% now. So almost the entire gap is closed. So let's just see how this goes going forward.
It was a good trade on your part, sir.
Amen.
So to dive in worked out pretty well in your favor. Let's go out some other product. Oh, before we do that really quickly, let's look at what's open over there on Deribit. And coming into the start of the year, we've said this before, the crypto markets suffer from this in a much larger level than it seems like a lot of other more established listed derivatives markets do, which is just end of the year, end of quarter expirations take just a ton of OI off the board. And December is always that way in the crypto markets. It almost wipes the slate clean. Another reason why maybe our skew numbers and vol numbers are looking a little bit wonkier is because we've seen a ton of long-term positions vanish with December expiration. And now we're coming in, and it's almost a new game every January. And that's reflected again in the OI numbers. There are only 172,000 calls left open on Deribit. That's down 58,000 from our last show a couple of weeks ago. Puts only 76,000 open on Deribit. That's down 43,000. So we've clearly lost a lot of OI, even with the new positioning that's happened since the start of the year. Still, these numbers down across the board. So again, that also could be having an impact on some of these vol and skew numbers we're seeing out there as well. We'll see it even more starkly, I'm sure, when we get to ETH in a minute. Let's go out some of the other products you folks know and love out there, at least in terms of ways to get crypto exposure into your securities accounts, certainly ones that are optionable. Let's start with BITO. BITO 2280 when we kicked off the show, up 2.2 points. The ADV also starting to explode again. It kind of fell into the toilet a year ago when the crypto market was at its nadir. I should say we were in crypto winter 5.0, whatever number it was. I don't know. I lose track at this point. Nobody was touching BITO. The ADV had plummeted to like 12, 15,000 contracts a day. That ADV shooting back up to 56,000. It's up another 5,000 just since our last show, and already almost 100,000, 94,000 contracts on the tape today as we dove into showtime. So again, that ADV going to be soaring again. And the vol also soaring as well, up to about a 77, up 15 points. Since our last show. So BITO on fire out there. Let's look really quickly what's lighting it up out there today. Looks like the big dog, 8,800 of the Jan 22s that expire, again, just monthlies, as well as 3,800 of the Jan 25 calls. These expire this Friday. These are in the weeklies, and 3,400 of the Jan 23s. So a whole bunch of upside calls going up today in BITO, which, again, not surprising. Also, the same case, if you look at the top size positions that are open right now in BITO, it's still, if you look at the top 5, they're all calls all the time. They haven't really changed much since our last show, just increasing in size a little bit. Number 5, 33,000 of the Jan 20s. These are expiring. In fact, they're all expiring in 2025 except for one. Number 4, 48,000 of the Jan 25s. Number 3, 71,000 of the Jan 35s. Number 2, 83,000 of the only regular Jan, this month Jan expiring right now, the Jan 2024 65 calls. Don't think we're going to get there. That would be an intriguing. What would it take to get BITO to 65? That's an interesting thought question. Certainly by Jan expiration. I don't think even the ETF can do that, listeners. And then number one, 97,000 of the Jan 2025 30 calls. So there are some size positions open right now in BITO. One of them going the way of the dodo in a couple of weeks. Be interesting to see how that repositions. But if you're looking for any puts out there, none to be found, at least in the top 5, and none to be found in today's activity. If you go a little farther, let's go out to another product you folks love out there. A lot of you have spoken in our polls, and you've clearly spoken in the volume numbers as well. This is Mara, aka Marathon Digital Holdings. This is for a lot of you your number one crypto proxy from at least certainly from an optionable product you can put in your securities account. That is reflected again today, man. This thing has been on the rampage since we last talked about it. It's up $6.70 since our last show, trading 26.44 when we kicked off the show. This thing has been all over the place. The numbers reflect that. The ADV has shot up 202,000 contracts since we last talked about it. It's now up to nearly 500,000 contracts a day, 483,000. You're getting into VIX territory now, listeners, in terms of ADV. So a whole bunch of you folks are slinging Mara options right now. And that is the case again today. 323,000 on the tape as we were rolling into the start of the show. And the vol also reflecting these, shall we say, aggressive moves since our last show. The vol's up to a whopping 145%. That's up 29 points since our last show. In terms of action, what are the size positions out here in Mara? Surprisingly, they're actually smaller than the BITO positions, which is interesting because the ADV is over 4x Mara versus BITO. But the number 5 position in Mara right now, there are 24,000 of the Jan 125s. So again, long way to go for the 125s. Number 4, 24,000 of the Jan 2025 10s. Those are looking pretty good right now. Number 3, 29,000 of the only put in the top 5, the regular Jan 10 puts. Those not looking so great. Number 2, 31,000 of the Jan 30s. Again, we could get there easily by Jan expiration, certainly given this movement rate. And the number 1 size position in Mara options right now, 34,000 of the Jan 10s. Again, those looking pretty good out there. Mr. Bill, I know a lot of our audience has been flocking into these optionable crypto names they can put in their securities account, like BITO and also Mara. Are any of these on your radar right now? And what are your thoughts on some of these size positions we're seeing rack up in these products, sir?
I think one of the reasons why I love doing this show, Mark, because I walk away learning more than I feel I contribute. And I'm looking at the entries, the top holdings of Mara. And it's kind of like the Berkshire Hathaway of crypto, because you have almost a 16% weighing of Global X blockchain ETF, Bitwise Crypto Industry Innovators ETF, Amplified Transformational Data Sharing, Spiders S&P Software and Services ETF. So you have 88 components held inside of Mara, and I find it absolutely fascinating that this thing is flinging around like you say it is. And, you know, I mean, I'm more of a purist, so I really dig like the Coinbase stock, because when you have Coinbase, you have access to, 40 different parts of the blockchain infrastructure. And that's what I really like most about it. But I tell you, you guys have opened up my mind and my eyes to other products that, could benefit our clients for more pure plays in the crypto space. So I'm definitely putting this on my 2024 list of things to look at, even though I haven't completely bought onto the BITO ETF that you and I spent a year or two discussing, because I'm just a slow mover in a fast-moving world.
You made the right choice with GBTC. That wasn't a bad one.
Well, it wasn't easy, as I was dry heaving in the garbage can in August of that year, but it did pay off, as any long gamut trader will tell you. Sometimes it's you just got to hang on and babysit the position. So, this is great because we did sell a lot of GBTC at the end of the year. GBTC was up like 360%. We had a 4% allocation to almost every portfolio as an investment advisory firm, and it really added a lot of bottom line to our portfolios. And now this, gives me an opportunity of looking at some other options, and I really, really appreciate that. And I appreciate your listeners contributing, what they're doing, because we can't live in a bubble like this. This is really great information.
Well, we try to give you homework whenever you come on the show, Mr. Bill. You mentioned Coinbase. That's another one we didn't have a chance to even get to. That one, of course, lighting it up out there as well. The ADV in Coinbase now, a little north of 250,000 contracts, and no slouch out there either. And today, about 168,000 contracts on the tape. So again, a lot of different ways you could play optionable crypto names in your securities account, listeners. For those of you, maybe you're like Bill, maybe you're not down with BITO for whatever reason. A lot of other names out there. Our chat's loving Mara. They're saying Mara is crazy and those volume numbers are off the chain. Yes, that is indeed the case. Those volume numbers are certainly worth watching. You know what else is worth watching? A little bit of the altcoin universe. So let's get there now.
It's time to move beyond Bitcoin and find out what's moving the rest of the crypto marketplace. It's time to boldly venture into the altcoin universe.
All right, everybody, welcome to the altcoin universe, the portion of the show where we go beyond your BITOs and your Bitcoins and all those big Bitcoin-related names, and we focus a little more on the rest of the crypto universe. Let's start looking at the top 10 because this thing's been kind of wild over the last couple of months, watching the evolution out here. Some names getting kicked to the curb, like, for example, you don't see our old friend Tron there anymore, but intriguing stuff. Doge also making its way down. Well, no more spoilers. Let's get into the list, listeners. Cost you $11.5 billion worth of market cap to break into the top 10. Right? That shows you how much this rising Bitcoin tide has lifted all of the crypto boats along with it. That was less than 8 billion not that long ago, listeners. 7.5 billion. So you're talking up 3.5 to 4 billion in terms of just what it cost you to break into the top 10. Again, as all of these crypto assets have been on quite the wild ride. Number 10 gets you to our old friend Doge. Doge, if you listened to the show last year, was hanging out number 8 for the better part of most of last year. Then it got kicked to number 9. Now all the way down at number 10. So apparently Elon's love can't keep it at the number 9 spot. Will it manage to maintain its footing in the top 10? I guess we'll find out. This week the answer is yes. Coming in with a little more north of 11.5 billion worth of market cap, and the number 10 spot. Number 9, Avalanche, 13.2 billion worth of market cap. Intriguing stuff there. Number 8, Cardano, 19 billion. Number 8, we're already up to 19 billion, listeners. Number 7, USD Coin, 25.3 billion. Number 6, our old friend XRP. You know, the one name that really can't seem to catch a massive bid is XRP. This thing's just kind of languishing. Was at 58 cents when we ran this. That's a little bit better, but it's certainly not the move we've seen in some of these other names. Certainly not like what we've seen in number 5. We'll get there in a second. Number 6, XRP, 31 and about $500 million. Number 5, Solana. Man, this thing has been on the rampage. Even if it has given back some of the upside, still threatening $100. 42.8 billion worth of market cap. Man, this thing was at the beginning of the year, a year ago, when we were coming off the FTX madness, listeners. Solana was dipping below the 10 handle, and here we are now at north of $100. At least it was recently. So a crazy, wild run for Solana. Number 4, BNB, 46.6 billion. Number 3, it's Tether. Once again, 93.6 billion. Number 2, you know what it is? It's ETH, 282 billion, and holding down the top spot, Mr. Bill, threatening to break the 1T level again. It's Bitcoin, 920 billion worth of market cap. So man, we are closing in on that 1T level once again. This seemed like such a distant and unreachable bar just a few months ago when crypto was languishing, and here we are now threatening the 1T level. Let's get out into the number 1 in a lot of your hearts on the crypto front. This is, of course, ETH. On our last show was at 21.72. Coming in to start the show today, 23.56. So threatening that magical 2,500 level that I know a lot of you key in on. Up 184 handles since our last show. We threatened that 2,500 handle not too long ago. Actually looks like at the end of last year. 24.45 is where we topped out around that range for ETH. The low was last week on the 3rd, 21.14 for ETH. So it's had a little over 300, almost 350 handle range since our last show. But Mr. Bill, a lot of fun stuff lurking in that top 10. I know you're a huge Avalanche guy. I know that. But beyond that, I know you're also very intrigued by the number 2 out there, ETH. What's catching your eye in ETH land these days?
Well, you know, Ethereum, listen, I'm going to encourage everyone to listen to to read a crypto thesis from a guy named Ryan Selkis of Messari. And listen, Ethereum has made some amazing upgrades to their platform in 2022 and in the spring of 2023. It is definitely the operating system, global operating system that is supposed to operate as it should. There's billions and billions and billions of dollars tied up in on-chain holdings of in Ethereum, right? That's being locked up in value. But at the same time, it does move slow, and other layer one, layer two solutions are coming ahead of the game. This is what's making Solana, just pop like it has. And so I like Ethereum. It's kind of like owning General Motors or IBM. It's probably a part of every portfolio, but I just don't see how this is going to be the next, Apple or NVIDIA or, name any other hot stock that you and I can talk about in the last 20 or 25 years. This is kind of like old school legacy companies, Ethereum is. And I put this in big quotation marks, right? And so I like Ethereum. I hope it goes back up to $5,000 a token. Will it? Sure. Maybe. Why not? At this point in time, honestly, with Apple having a market cap of like $4 trillion, who would have ever thought back, when you and I could flip a coin whether we should buy Dell computer or Apple, we would have all selected Dell back in the early 2000s. And so there will come a time when we have a conversation where we're going to be like, oh yeah, Bitcoin is $4 trillion in market cap, 14 trillion. Wow, I remember it when it was less than $1 trillion. And so Ethereum, I think, is going to be the same thing. It just takes time to build these market caps. And 1 trillion, I think, of Bitcoin market cap, and even the market cap of Ethereum, we're going to look back and say, wow, it's really gone from, A to Z. And we talked about it on the show. I love Ethereum, but I'm just not sure if it's going to provide the type of upside gains that we like as degenerates on the crypto trading show.
You're not the only person to express some doubts on ETH. You're right. For a lot of people, it was kind of their core holding. And now we've seen competitors, alternatives like Solana just on the ramp. It seemed like Solana was dead this time a year ago. The FTX association really seemed like it was going to be too damaging for it to overcome. And here we are now, not just recovering, but resurgent. And so I know the narrative a year and a half ago was ETH versus Solana. Maybe we're getting back into that frame of reference again. A lot of people are back in that Solana horse. It's easier to buy when it was, a $20 up to $50 versus a, $2,500 asset. So certainly intriguing stuff to be had out there, but we're not done with ETH just yet. Listen, let's break down the vol numbers out there. Maybe, if the Solana keeps this up, you might have to return Solana to the show in some fashion. I know it kind of made an ignominious departure post FTX, but we can start getting some interesting Solana volume out there on the options front. We might have to return to those days. But let's focus right now on the ETH front. ETH 7-day vol. Again, these numbers kind of bonkers, listeners. It was a 48.2 on our show 2 weeks ago. Coming in to start the show today, 84.5. Again, these are coming from the contracts out there on Deribit. So just a lot of juice out there. You're going out a little bit further. Let's go out 30 days. The vol 2 weeks ago, 54.4. Coming in to start the show today at an even 70. So these vols starting to look fairly juicy. And the 180-day vol, it was a 60.2 on our show last week. Coming in to start the show today, even going out 6 months, that vol also a 70. So ETH, looking back to the days of when ETH was a structurally more volatile asset than Bitcoin, intriguing what's going on out there right now. I know if you look at the near data stuff, looks like Bitcoin is a little bit more volatile, but still intriguing stuff out there. Actually, no, ETH has taken it back. 180-day vol, Bitcoin is at a 64. 30-day vol is at a 68.5. So ETH ever so slightly taking the crown back again from Bitcoin after languishing at a much lower vol level for much of the second half of last year. Skew-wise, the 7-day skew was flat on our show 2 weeks ago. Coming in to start the show today, looking a little negative 3.3. So maybe, again, going back to what we were saying about Bitcoin, maybe some folks expecting us to, if not quite top out here, at least settle out here for a little bit. 30-day skew was flat 2 weeks ago, pretty much flat again today, about a positive quarter, so really nothing. It's flat again 2 weeks later. 6-month skew, it was flat 2 weeks ago. Coming in to start the show today, it was about a positive 5. Mr. Bill, anything surprising you out there from those vol or skew numbers in Ethereum, sir?
Honestly, Mark, the answer is no. I wish I could have some really intelligent things to say other than my focus has been on Bitcoin and the Bitcoin ETF and how we manage some of these crypto assets and client portfolios. Ethereum, again, for me, it's almost like IBM, General Motors, Eastman Kodak. Well, maybe not Kodak. Like this old school names that, I mean, they were the ones that gave us the foundation for the parallel universe financial system that we are creating right now. And these things are going to run side by side. And Ethereum is part of that. And just imagine a future where, Ethereum-based operating systems just seamlessly bring the entire globe together. So I can't say that any of my clients, other than some of their own personal holdings, do we talk about Ethereum. Most of the time, the clients that ask for me to advise them on their personal holdings, they want to know the next Doge. They want to know the next Shiba. They want to know the next whatever it is, like the crazy one-off, because their core holdings, they're in a good place with. And Ethereum is a part of that. But in terms of trading it or putting it in client portfolios, we're just not there yet.
Interesting. You know what else is not there, Mr. Bill, is the OI. As I mentioned, it tends to fall off a cliff after December expiration, and ETH is the worst victim of that. Seeing that reflected right now, what's left open on Deribit right now. 1.78 million calls open on Deribit. That may sound like a lot, but it's down 580,000, nearly 600,000 from our last show. So a whole bunch of OI vanishing at the end of the year. In ETH, the puts, same deal. There are 580,000 puts in total left open on Deribit right now. That's down 310,000 from our last show. So you add those two together, you're talking nearly 900,000 contracts have vanished since the last time we gathered here on the show, listeners. So ETH tends to suffer the most from the quarterly expirations, and that being reflected again in the lighter OI that's left on Deribit right now. Let's get out to one we were just talking about, listeners, and it's our old friend Solana. On our last show on December 18th, it was at about a 72 even. Again, as I mentioned, coming in to start the show today, 99 and a quarter, up about 27 and a quarter handles. Bill, we were just talking about Solana. I know in the past you haven't really been a huge fan of it. I think maybe I'm putting words in your mouth, but it's kind of hard to ignore it now, this run that it's been on. I'm curious, so what are your thoughts on Solana, and are some of those clients you mentioned before, are they starting to be intrigued by this again?
As a matter of fact, that's funny that you mentioned that, because I would say that it's split 50-50, and the handful of clients that we have that actually own Solana. Some of them capitulated, when it was trading down around 19 per share during the FTX crisis. Other people just bought a little bit more of their holdings. So I don't think I was negative Solana, because there were definitely a lot of developers building apps on top of this layer 2 protocol and this Ethereum competitor. But I will say, from a technical standpoint, boy, trading at 125, 100, almost 100 per token it's a little bit ahead of itself. And I think we could, trade back the mid 70s just as it goes to the middle of the bell curve. And even if it were to get oversold again, so say I'm right, say the market is overbought, S&P 500, NASDAQ QQQ, like the whole complex is overdone going into an election year, which generally is sidewaysy, and maybe even oversold, during the summertime. We could see Solana back into 40s and 50s per token. So, I do like it. I think the platform itself is amazing. Everybody, a lot of developers are building on it. But in terms of price, I think it's gotten a little ahead of itself. So I'm not going to advise accumulating here, unless you're just going to dollar cost average like other cryptocurrencies. But, it certainly seems to be a place where people, developers are building, and that to me is really important.
Yeah, it has been certainly a fascinating one to watch. Again, up 27 handles just since our last show. Unfortunately, our old friend XRP was at 60 cents on our last show. Coming in to start the show today, 58 cents. So XRP, for whatever reason, it cannot get out of its own way. Even with everything else on the rally, it seems like these days. We've talked about XRP many times. Hopefully, someday we'll have some resolution and we could see some definitive movement in one direction or the other out there, but it hasn't been over the last couple of weeks. Our old friend Doge also taking a bit of a hiatus since our last show. It was 9 cents on our show last week, 8.1 cents this week. Hence, it's dropping down the market cap list. Litecoin, $70.15 on our last show, $66.89 today. So again, it hasn't been all straight up for everything. Just most things, listeners. That's down 3 1/4 from our last show. Cardano, 57.8 cents back in December, 53.7 cents, so down about 4 cents out there as well. Polkadot, last show, 671, coming in to start the show today, $7.44. So that one's up 73 cents. And our old friend Shiba Inu, pretty much treading water, both of it at 0.000009 since our last show. But we're not done yet. I want to pick Mr. Bill's brain on some of our crypto questions.
You've got questions about crypto. Who doesn't? It's time to find out the answers to your crypto questions.
All right, everybody, welcome to the crypto questions segment. And intriguing ones. This is beginning of the year, listeners, so we like to ask you folks a bunch of sentiment polls for the year. We did this last week, Mr. Bill. We asked our audience if they had to buy a 10% out of the money call expiring on December 31st on one of the following asset classes, which one would they choose? We gave them volatility, so VIX or any of those products out there, or the equities. Again, we don't care which index you pick, or fixed income, could be the 10-year, 30-year, whatever you like, or crypto. In our previous polls last year, Mr. Bill, crypto never got above 7.5%, maybe 8%. Crypto had a better showing this year, even though volatility ended up taking it. 41.7% of our audience want to buy a 10% out of the money call in the VIX. 33.3%, so exactly a third choosing the equities. 16.7%, so over a 2x increase for crypto. I wonder why that happened. And then fixed income coming up last, 8.3%. Mr. Bill, what are your thoughts on that? And do you agree, or would you maybe have chosen all crypto in our sentiment poll last week, sir?
No, again, based on what I believe to be an overvalued market, we still have short-term, Fed funds rate at 5.25%. Interest rates are dragging down the economy, although nobody's really talking about it, at least from my perspective. If you're a contractor and you take out a prime plus one loan to build an apartment complex or a construction commercial property, you have to pay a 9.5% or 10% loan and put like 20% down. I think what's going to so anyhow, the reason why I bring that up is because I agree with the poll here. I'm more of a long ball. I can tell you this right now. I like the idea of buying 10% out of the money calls in the VIX. I think the market's going to get kicked in the teeth between now and March. Again, more sidewaysy action, potentially even a decline going into the election. We'll see how it goes. Fixed income, yes. If they say you can't fight the Fed, then we will see lower 10-year rates. And the 10-year rates have had a great decline, right? The market is anticipating lower rates, but I'm not so sure we're going to get it as soon as everybody wants. So I think right now, the way your listeners have responded to the poll, I think they are 100% spot on. VIX would be a great play to buy some VIX and buy some volatility here. Equities, overdone. Don't think I would get too carried away. Fixed income, yes, I like fixed income, but that too has really enjoyed a great window dressing. I think that's the word, the term that really phrases what we saw in the last 6 weeks of the year. Almost 6 to 8 weeks of pure upside in all these market indexes. I think it's kind of window dressing and some technical overboughtness. Coming from oversold into overbought. And crypto, again, everything's on the high end of the range except for the volatility. And so if I'm going to be a contrarian, I have to buy volatility and sell everything else, at least today, right? A one-day trade, so to speak.
Not a bad do, as you used to say, especially when VIX hanging out around a 12 to 13 handle. It can move 1.2, 1.3 points in a minute. So that's easy to do out there. We have another question this week, Mr. Bill, that I want to get your thoughts on. I'm going to make you do a VIX prediction for the close for the end of the year. So start mulling that over as well. I threw you a curveball here. But before we get there, we have a poll right now that's going up for our audience, kind of related to what we just talked about. Again, a beginning of the year sentiment poll. This one, very straightforward. We're just asking our audience quite simply, will the S&P 500 close positive on the year? Heck yes, heck no, or who cares? I'm in crypto. Mr. Bill, you could be that last one, I guess, if you want. But what are your thoughts on this poll? And then more importantly, what do you think our audience is voting for, Mr. Bill?
Well, Mark, you really did throw me a curveball. Let's see. I would have to go back and look at how the market did during presidential election cycles, because for me, that's the area that we have to look at right now. I think we close up on the year, but marginally. Boy, we had one heck of a year in 2023, and I just can't imagine two back-to-back years where we're up 22% or 23%, 50% in the NASDAQ 100. So I'm going to say Up marginally to who cares?
There you go. Well, our audience says heck yes, 61.5%. So nearly 2/3 right now saying they expect a positive year for the S&P 500. 38.5% saying heck no. No votes for crypto yet. This just went live a couple of hours ago, Mr. Bill. So this is our question of the week. You folks can play along over there at Options. You got throughout the rest of the week to make your voice heard. And Mr. Bill, I'll let you get out of here on this one. We've had everyone guessing our annual vol prize poll. We have everyone at the beginning of the year guess where VIX is going to close on the final trading day of the year. It's a fun little challenge. We've had most of our network co-hosts and guests make their picks. So now it is your turn, sir. What are you feeling for where VIX will close at the end of 2024, sir?
24.5.
Wow, right at it. Look at you. Okay, so you're expecting a bit of a banger end to the year. So that election vol is going to persist throughout the end of the year. Interesting.
I'm looking at a chart right now going back to 2012 in the VIX, and it seems like near the end of the year, it's in the low to mid 20s. And I could draw a straight line going all the way back to September 2012. And that's the number I'm going to stick with. So we'll put that in the record books.
There you go. Mr. Bill, you are on the docket now. We will revisit those results at the end of the year. This time, a couple of weeks ago, we did our finals for the year. We revealed that no one won the vol prize for 2024. It was a hard year. 19-point range in VIX. That made it hard. It was a bit of a moving target. We'll see if we get something similar. Maybe Mr. Bill will take home our 2024 vol prize. We shall see. Unfortunately, listeners, that music means we have come to the end of another sojourn through the world of crypto. But before we go, Mr. Bill, if folks want to check out what you got cooking in the land of Cenacle, maybe they want to check out your book. Where should they go? What should they do?
Just go to Amazon.com and type in the search term cryptocurrency estate planning, and my book will come up like third from the top. And yeah, I would love if your listeners would throw me a bone, so to speak, and pick up a copy for themselves, especially those that are self-custodying cryptocurrency. Give a copy to your significant other, give a copy to your estate planning attorney, give a copy to your financial advisor, and let them and begin the conversation in 2024. Because as if crypto goes to where we think it is, and Mark and you and I were not so certain back in 2010, 2011 when we first started having these conversations about crypto. We could be talking about a $4 trillion asset class in the next year or two, and so this is something that you have to take care of and make sure you pass on to your beneficiaries. So it would be very much appreciated to give me to boost my self-esteem in 2024 and just keep the lights on over here.
There you go. Check him out, listeners over there on Amazon. Leave him a rating or review if you have checked out the book. And of course, while you're checking things out, make sure you check out the folks over there at amberdata.io, the place to go to kick the tires and light the fires on all this crypto data we're talking about throughout the show, and a heck of a lot more that we don't have time to get to on the show here at the end of the day. That is going to do it for us on the Crypto Rundown today. Also going to do it for us on the network today. Going to have some other content, pre-recorded stuff coming at you throughout the middle of the week, including another great options boot camp. All of our pro folks already heard that one live. If you want to check out the pro for yourself, it's only one place to go, theoptionsinsider.com/pro. Great stuff going up over there. Then we're back again live from the Chicago studio on Thursday for the option block, as well as This Week in Futures Options. Back again on Friday for volatility views, and exclusively for all you pro folks coming back again for options oddities. Then remember, we're off again next Monday. Don't blame me. Mondays when all the holidays fall, listeners. So we're off for MLK Day next Monday. Back again in 2 weeks, unfortunately, for another episode of the Crypto Rundown. Stay safe out there, everybody.
The Crypto Rundown is brought to you by Amber Data. If you're entering the digital asset class, you'll need access to granular on-chain and market data from multiple venues to power research, trading, risk management, and compliance. Amber Data delivers comprehensive data and insights into blockchain networks, crypto markets, and decentralized finance, empowering financial institutions to apply traditional finance methods to digital assets. Amber Data eliminates the infrastructure setup, integration challenges, and maintenance headaches to access digital asset data, reducing cost and time to market to enter the digital asset class. Learn more and download their digital asset data guide at www.amberdata.io. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.